Good Tuesday afternoon to you. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. First day of the NFL Combine. Kind of a light day out in Indianapolis. We will head out there. Hayden Grove will join us just a little later in the show. Quincy Carrier will join us. We'll talk plenty of Browns with Quincy as well. Some non-Combine related news coming out from the Combine, though, earlier today. The Browns will have joint practices with the Philadelphia Eagles before their preseason game this year. It's kind of interesting. Kevin Stefanski, a Philly guy. Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni from Mount Union, a Cleveland guy. The Browns will host those joint practices out in Berea with the Eagles. And as Tom Wither of the AP noted, there wasn't even a fight until the joint practices ended with the Giants a year ago. With that, let's welcome in Hayden Grove, reporter for the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Hayden is at the Combine in Indianapolis. Hayden, appreciate the time. Joint practice is always a thing that usually teams like because it gives you a chance to practice against some guys in other jerseys.
Yeah, I mean, last year it worked with the New York Giants. The Browns hosted the Giants, obviously, and I thought for the majority of the 2 or 3 days that they worked, I thought the Browns kind of manhandled them. But now with the Eagles coming in, and we asked Andrew Berry about it today, and he said basically Kevin and Nick Sirianni figured it out, and they're going to have some dual practices in Cleveland. Also worth mentioning, Jonathan Gannon, a Cleveland product, defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. So plenty of ties between Cleveland and Philadelphia. Obviously, Andrew Berry worked in the Philadelphia Eagles front office as well. So a lot of ties between those two. Kind of makes sense. They both would come together for a joint practice. And, you know, Tom is right. Everything was good. And then all of a sudden there were some Sterling Shepard and Troy Hill punches being thrown. But other than that, it was a pretty productive time. And I think that's why they're doing it again. Yeah, without question. And you mentioned John Gannon, a St. Ignatius grad. All right. So you mentioned Andrew Berry. Media availability, obviously, topic everybody wants to talk about, Baker Mayfield and the recovery. Here is Andrew Berry from the Combine.
Baker's doing well in his rehab. I think you guys know how hard he works. He's worked his tail off since the surgery. He's right on track. I talked to him right after the surgery. He was a little bit groggy. It's the first time he's ever had surgery in his entire career, but he's worked really hard, and we feel good about his progress.
Has there been more interaction than that first time?
I'm sorry?
Has there been more interaction?
Yeah, we've interacted with Baker as is typical with any player during the offseason. We've interacted with him multiple times throughout since the end of the season.
And again, that's not a surprise, Hayden. The teams and the players always communicate. It's surprising that a guy in the fourth year in the NFL is having his first surgery. That is a good thing for the quarterback Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I mean, the less times under the knife as an NFL player, the easier it is to play, and the less difficulty you have to endure in rehab and whatnot. So definitely good to Baker Mayfield not going out of the knife much. But yeah, of course, you have communication with your quarterback. I'm sure Andrew Berry has reached out to him numerous times. I'm sure Kevin Stefanski has done the same. I'm sure they're in a lot of contact. I mean, that's the leader of your football team. That's the kind of the linchpin of your organization is the quarterback position. So yeah, I mean, it seems certainly that Andrew Berry is very good at saying a lot without saying anything at all. But I think, it's a good positive step that, Baker continues to rehab and the Browns have reached out to him and still maintain good communication. So nothing necessarily surprising in that regard.
And as would be expected, Andrew Berry, when he was meeting with the Cleveland media, pressed a little bit further about kind of Baker Mayfield and the situation going forward. Here's Andrew Berry again from the Combine in Indianapolis.
Look, I think, Tony, the reality is we've seen him play at a high level before. I think, being realistic, the injury does have some impact on his performance. But we're focused on him getting healthy. We know he works. We think he's talented. We've seen him play at a playoff caliber level before. And I don't think there's any reason that he can't reach that level next year.
So again, and you were part of that interview process there, just reiterating, they know what he looks like when he's healthy. They expect him to get back. Accurate that's what Andrew Berry kind of tone and tenor there?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what he said. He said basically, we've seen Baker play at a high level. We've seen him play at a playoff caliber. There's no reason for us to expect anything less than a bounce back to that caliber. Now that he's healthy, he said the injury definitely played a little bit of a role. I didn't say the whole role, but played a little bit of the role in the way he played this season. And they're just looking for him to getting healthy. So I think with Baker Mayfield and with the whole Browns organization, I think there's a lot of onus being put on Baker's health and just getting him healthy and then go from there. I mean, that's kind of the most important thing. Andrew Berry certainly maintains how important that the quarterback position is in the NFL. So he wants to do everything. And right now, the only quarterback on the roster that's, going to start and going to be a future part of this team is going to be Baker Mayfield. So until that changes, you got to put everything you can into the quarterback position and getting him as healthy as possible.
So Combine is one of the big get-togethers as far as prospects go. Leading up into the draft, there's free agency, which starts March 16th. That's when you can talk to the guys and figure out who you're going to be able to sign. Then the draft comes after that. Andrew Berry was asked about the positions that appear to be needs, wide receiver and defensive line.
I wouldn't necessarily say that they're necessarily a top priority, Tony. Obviously, we have to get more players under contract in both of those spots, needless to say. Ultimately, we're going to prioritize opportunity. And I think there are a number of ways to assemble the team or construct the roster that ultimately allows you to reach your goal of winning games. So, we'll take the next couple weeks and like I said, try and map our resources to opportunities.
And again, Andrew Berry has been really good at doing that the last 2 years. That means if there's a trade, you make a trade. If it's a free agent, you sign a free agent. You use any means necessary to upgrade the roster. That's kind of what Andrew Berry is saying there, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly what he's saying. I mean, you got to exhaust every avenue. If that means talking to every GM in the league and trying to figure out a trade that makes sense for every team, or going through every free agent and trying to get the best deal possible, and then going through every draft prospect and saying, man, do we need this guy? Does this guy fit our culture? Does he fit where we're looking for here in Cleveland? I think they've done a good job drafting. I think they've done a good job in trades. I think they've done a decent job in free agency. I think free agency in the NFL it's interesting. You're not often seeing huge name free agents with huge deals work out really well, unless it's maybe a quarterback on an extension. I mean, the NFL is kind of an extension business to where guys, they play with the teams that they kind of are brought up with because you want to lock those guys in for the best money possible, the best deal possible. So I think the Browns have done really well with extensions. And I think that, we'll see how that continues this offseason, maybe getting Jadeveon Clowney re-signed, maybe getting an extension for Denzel Ward. I think that'll be more of the same there, but I think you're right. You look at every kind of avenue to improve the team. And I think that, unfortunately in the NFL, I think free agency can kind of be a little tough. In terms of, bringing in the quality of a player that matches the caliber of the paycheck they're going to bring in.
Yeah, and I would agree. And in thinking about that, after you said that, every system's a little different. So you might be asking a wide receiver or a linebacker or a defensive end to do something different in your system than what he was doing in the previous team's system. And that's why free agency is kind of dicey.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you've seen with Austin Hooper, right? Austin Hooper was great with the Atlanta Falcons, played in a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan, really kind of lit it up with them and was, earned a big contract. And then, came to Cleveland, kind of was maybe not promised, but was kind of told something different than what actually was going to happen. And, you've seen the production drop off. So you're right. Every system's different. And that's what the difficult part is. You saw a really productive Austin Hooper in Atlanta. Maybe he wasn't asked to do as much pass blocking, or maybe he wasn't asked to do as much in terms of the mental aspect of the game that Kevin Stefanski is putting forward. So it all goes into it. And I think that's why you can spend big money on an offensive lineman because, lo and behold, it's pretty much the same thing. You just got to, execute. But for receivers, for guys like that, it's a little different. So the Browns are in the market for a receiver. I don't know if they'll go in the route of free agency or if they'll kind of stick to the draft and trades.
So what did Andrew Berry, I know he was asked about Jarvis Landry's contract situation. What was said about that when asked about Jarvis Landry?
Yeah, he kind of said that basically, we're going to talk to Jarvis, and Jarvis has been a great part of our culture. I think back to Jarvis Landry, I think it's all about fit. I think it's all about the money. Does the money match the value? Does the money allow us to do other things to improve our receiver room? Does the money allow us to improve our team? Does the money allow us to figure something out with Jarvis in addition to all that? So I think Andrew Berry is going to take a very pragmatic approach. Obviously the Browns love Jarvis Landry. They love his effort that he's given them. They love his tenacity. They love his leadership. They love all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I think Andrew Berry is going to be very pragmatic and very smart about, okay, here's what we need to do with the money. And if we can get Jarvis to this number, we can keep him. If not, we got to let him go.
All right, let's take a look at this. Nick Chubb, Browns running back. And he is moving some serious weight. This is 495 pounds, so almost 500 pounds. And take a look at this squat. That is just killing me thinking of 500 pounds nearly that Nick Chubb is just moving around without any problem at all. He ends up squatting it 5 times, and he probably could have continued. That is a powerful, powerful running back for your Cleveland Browns, Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very, very strong guy. And, that's just genetics and hard work right there. I mean, that's who Nick Chubb is. I mean, just an athletic freak and puts in the work and doesn't, necessarily mouth off about it, but is incredibly strong, has incredibly, strong and powerful legs. I mean, that's superhuman stuff right there. So good for Nick Chubb, good for the Browns that he's able to, be healthy enough to do that right now. Just be careful on that squat rack. You can, I know that for him, that's a good weight and God bless him, but you don't want to have any back issues or anything, happening on that squat rack.
Yeah, my back hurts just from watching him do that.
Yeah.
Hayden Grove and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Hayden is at the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. We will head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Plenty of Browns talk ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns. Time for us to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Considering the way things are going right now, we have a quarterback that's under scrutiny. Questions are starting to be raised about the coach, and I think we're in a good place with the general manager. If we keep repeating the same mistakes of the past, our future is only going to be filled with the problems of the past. So I'm afraid that, being quick to turn about on these systems that are in place may not be a good thing, because I know that if we turn it over and rebuild over and over and over and over again, we have no reason to expect anything different than the last 25 years. So with that, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate everything. It's a great show. Look forward to seeing it. Bye.
It's a really good point, Hayden. You tend to forget one of the reasons the Browns were in the situation they were before they hired Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry is because they continually were changing general managers, head coaches, couldn't get a scheme, couldn't figure out what players they needed. There's a lot of wisdom in saying, be patient.
Yes, there is. The Browns have done one thing very, very poorly amongst a lot of things, and that's, finding continuation, finding the same, the same continuity with your coaches, with your players, with all that. And, I think that the Browns are very much in danger of doing that again in terms of, they went to a playoff game, they started to take steps in the right direction, and then they had a year that they were not necessarily proud of, although I wouldn't call it a bad year. I would call it a year that was, below expectation. So I don't think they're at the point yet where we should be questioning, the head coach. We should be questioning the GM. We should be questioning the quarterback even. I mean, obviously last year was not a good year for Baker, but I think that they need another year under their belts, all three of them. And I think they can prove us all either right in terms of, I think that they can prove to us that they are playoff caliber, that they can, really come together and become some sort of a group that could be around for 10 years. Or, if this season doesn't go well, then at least they've had 3 years to look at it. And maybe they could, pull 1 year out of Andrew Barrymore or 1 year out of Kevin Stefanski more, but at least they're kind of all in it together, which is something we haven't seen in Cleveland for a long time.
Yeah, and along those lines now, Pro Football Focus ranked the 7 teams most likely to improve in the 2022 season, and the 5th most likely to improve is the Browns. The rationale was win total in 2021 was 8. The wins above replacement implied win total is rounding up to 10. 10 wins likely get you in the playoffs. So, again, a lot of injuries, a disappointing year when so much was expected, but you keep coming back to that word, patience. It's not always a linear improvement to where you want to get to go.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it ad nauseum. I mean, you look at the games that they lost, the Kansas City game. I mean, some costly errors from Nick Chubb, from Jamie Gillen, and then the costly error by John Johnson to let Tyreek Hill down the field. I mean, they probably should have won that game. You look at the Chargers game, a bad call on 4th down that would have completely changed the trajectory of that game. And, a misplay here, a misplay there. The Steelers game, Jarvis Landry fumbles and drops a couple passes. It was like they were snake bitten at times. And yes, like the play of your players is ultimately what's going to decide games. But sometimes just a couple of things don't go your way, and that costs you a game that you probably should have won. So I see where the implied win total would be a little bit higher last year than it was, than the actual win total. So I could have seen them winning 10 games if things were just slightly different. So you got to remember that it's all part of the patience thing, and it's all part of it's all part of the reason last year was so disappointing was because the Browns didn't get to where they wanted to go, and we thought that they were going to be a team that competed for a Super Bowl. Instead, they don't make the playoffs. So, but I don't think they were as far off as people thought, even with the way that Baker Mayfield played, even with some of the injuries they had. So, again, it's difficult to look back on, but you got to move forward.
The other thing is, remember, they won all those close games when they went 11-5. So, again, a little bit of correction, not out of the norm. All right, let's listen. Dan Orlovsky going to talk about the Browns with Baker Mayfield at the quarterback. This is from ESPN's NFL Live.
Do you think Baker Mayfield is good enough to lead a team to the Super Bowl?
I think he could be.
Based on what we've seen.
Yes, I think he could be a guy that you go to the Super Bowl with. I don't believe that he's a guy that you win the Super Bowl because you know where I stand. There's quarterbacks that you win because of, and there's quarterbacks you win with. I think they can get to the Super Bowl with Baker Mayfield. Listen, here's the question that you and I probably differ on, and I think the organization has to ask themselves this. Is Baker Mayfield more likely the 2020 player that had that 26 touchdown and 8 interception season, or is he more likely the 2021 player that, listen, he had 2 shoulder injuries, the knee and the heel. So that has to be a part of this equation. I also say this, I think that the organization, I want both parties to come out and say Baker Mayfield is the starting quarterback for this season.
And Hayden Grove, again, there's nothing wrong with being a quarterback that you can go to the Super Bowl with. There are probably less than 10 quarterbacks that you win a Super Bowl because of. There's probably 5, maybe 6.
Yeah, I think that Dan Orlovsky is really, really keen at evaluating the quarterback position. I think he does a great job in that, you're right. I think we look at the quarterback position in the NFL. We look at Aaron Rodgers, right? We look at Tom Brady. We look at Josh Allen. We look at Pat Mahomes. We look at even a guy like maybe Russell Wilson. I mean, we look at, 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks in the league that you're like, man, that guy can do it. And the other 20 plus, you're thinking sitting there like, man, they're not at that level. So I just think because Baker Mayfield's not at that level, I think a lot of people are like, well, forget it. Like, then what's the point of having him? Well, the point of having him is like Dan Orlovsky said, because he can get you to a Super Bowl with the team around him. You can win with Baker Mayfield. And I would say that the number of quarterbacks you can win a Super Bowl with is probably not that far off from 10 to 12. And that still leaves the majority of the league not in that conversation. So I think Dan is right in that, yes, Baker probably, in my estimation, is closer to that 2020 quarterback when he's fully healthy. Last year he wasn't fully healthy, and there were still some games where he played really, really well. So I think there is that in there. I think that, the minute that he goes to another team, I think he dominates and proves Cleveland wrong. And, the cycle reiterates itself. So that's why I think I would give him one more year, one more shot to do this. Put your faith in him for this year and then make him go earn that contract. And if he does, then, we're not talking about the quarterback position for another 5 years. But I would give him that opportunity to do it one more time. And if it doesn't work, then you move on. Then you try to find somebody who can, take you to where you want to go.
Before we take a quick break, we're going to head back to the voicemail in Truth and Reason. And this one about the quarterback, Baker Mayfield.
Hey, this is Brian Rizzo calling out of Hilliard. My thing is just about everybody's always saying that Baker can't play and Baker's no good, but have you ever thought about that maybe this system isn't for him? Because he came out of college a pretty good quarterback, so he's got the talent to throw the ball. So my question, I guess, is what do you think the chances of Stefanski maybe tailoring his offense towards more of what Baker can do good instead of what Stefanski does good? Just like to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
And again, appreciate all the voicemails. It's a valid point. I don't think they're going to completely redo Kevin Stefanski's offense. I do think there can be some slight nuances that play to some of the strengths of Baker Mayfield. Your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. I think that Kevin and Baker are not a perfect fit. I don't. I think Kevin is obviously very much smart throws, smart plays, smart, everything kind of timing, rhythm, and all that. And I think that's why you heard a lot about the Odell running the wrong route stuff, because, in this Kevin Stefanski offense, I think that's everybody's got to be exactly where they need to be at the exact same time. And I think Baker Mayfield, one of his biggest gifts coming out of college, and one of his biggest gifts in general, is the ability to make a play that is kind of off schedule. He can make a throw when he's in a bad position, or he can make a throw when things are kind of not where they need to be. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, I go back to his rookie year and I see a ton of those throws. Yes, it leads to more interceptions. I get that. But, I think Baker Mayfield could be a guy who throws 35 touchdowns and 15 picks a year. I think that's kind of the quarterback that he could be. But in Kevin Stefanski's offense, I don't think he's ever going to be that. I think he might, which is fine. If he's a 25 and 10 quarterback where he throws 10 picks and 25 touchdowns, if that's enough to win you games with the running game, that's what you need. So I think that Kevin Stefanski can definitely do things to make things better for Baker Mayfield. And I think that when Baker's healthy, I think that'll obviously play into it too. I think Kevin Stefanski was probably looking out for Baker's shoulder in certain situations, having him roll out in certain ways, in certain, plays and whatnot. So I think they both have some work to do. I think they can come to a sort of middle ground. And I think most of the work that Baker needs to do is just to get healthy and to be as focused and laser ready for the season as possible.
Yeah, I would agree. And the other thing I would say about Baker Mayfield, he wants to win. So he's going to do whatever he can to help his team win. Hayden Grove and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns and some interesting things about the quarterback position. That's straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Hayden Grove, who is at the NFL Scouting Combine out in Indianapolis. We're going to take a look at 2022 NFL free agency team fits, best team fits for 10 notable free agencies. This is according to NFL.com. They have Marcus Mariota being the best fit for the Browns, or the Browns being the best fit for him, rather. And then Jadeveon Clowney, a Browns free agent, best fit they feel is for the Seattle Seahawks. Hayden, Clowney is a guy I think the Browns really want back. Mariota, We'll get into him a little bit more in a minute. Just your thoughts on those two in the fits.
Yeah, I think Clowney. I think we actually did a segment earlier where Clowney was the best fit in Cleveland. So, I mean, I could see him being a fit. I mean, again, a guy like that, if he has a year that he has, like, he'd be a fit anywhere. I think any team would love a pass rusher. So, but Jadeveon, I don't think it's as much about fit. I think he fits very well in Cleveland. I think, with Myles Garrett there and some familiarity with Chris Kiffin and some familiarity with defense coordinator Joe Woods. I mean, why not come back for a year or two? To take a couple of years and get a good contract. But in terms of Marcus Mariota, like I said, I've said that I think the Browns' best option is to bring in a guy like Marcus or Teddy Bridgewater or Mitchell Trubisky, a guy that's kind of a fringe starter, or maybe a guy that could, push Baker Mayfield or come in if Baker Mayfield continues to have injury problems. So I could totally see Marcus Mariota being a good fit in Cleveland. Not saying he's the guy for the team or the future, but just for this year to kind of figure a way out with Baker Mayfield. If it doesn't work, then yeah, he can kind of come in and be a guy that can right the ship a little bit. I think that's a good fit in a couple of respects for sure.
All right. Well, we're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, and this one about Marcus Mariota.
So, I'm noticing like you guys, every time they bring up Marcus Mariota, you guys immediately say no. But you want to give Baker another year. We've seen the film on Baker. I'm asking you guys, take a look at the film on YouTube of Marcus Mariota. There's one, Marcus Mariota 2018. There's another where he was with the Titans then. There's another where Marcus Mariota was with the Oakland Raiders against the Chargers. I'm asking you guys to take a look at the film, see how many actually dropped balls there were, where he actually put the ball where it wanted to be, how much better he can run than Baker Mayfield, and how he actually does kind of look through his progression a lot more than Baker. That's all I'm asking you guys to do. Thanks. Bye.
All right, let's before we get to this, let's take a look at Marcus Mariota's his body of work when he was the starter at Tennessee, and he had a couple of nice years. But again, you look at what he's done, the production, it's a lot like what we have with Baker Mayfield. There's good years, there's bad years, there's years that were good early, and he regressed a little bit with the Titans before Ryan Tannehill eventually took over that job. Hayden, when you talk about bringing in Marcus Mariota, I don't think it's to be, if you're bringing him in, he's not supplanting Baker Mayfield. And the one thing I don't know is, I know Baker's a competitor. I know he wouldn't shy away. I don't know if you want to bring somebody in and make it a quarterback competition. By and large, if you have a team that has aspirations of winning and going deep in the playoffs, two quarterbacks usually doesn't work out very well.
Yeah, I don't think that it would be a quarterback competition. I mean, unless you bring in at this point, unless you bring in somebody that replaces Baker, or if you trade Baker, then it becomes somebody else's team. But the way that Andrew Berry's talking about, we expect Baker to be our starter, Baker's our guy, whatever. You can't bring in somebody and actually expect there to be a quarterback competition. I mean, that's just, to me, it's out of the question. I mean, if you want to go get Russell Wilson and replace him with Baker, you want to go get Matt Ryan and replace him with Baker, or replace Baker with him, that's fine. But if you bring in a Marcus Mariota or Mitchell Trubisky, it's to be a backup until further notice, until if Baker really starts to struggle or something like that. It's not a quarterback competition. If Baker Mayfield's taken the first snap in training camp, he's taken the first snap to start the season, barring injury. So I don't think it's going to be a quarterback competition if you bring in anyone. But I think Marcus Mariota is a good fit in terms of, he's backed up before. He backed up Derek Carr. He's mobile. Accurate passer, maybe nothing wows you about him or about his arm, but certainly a professional and can provide you what you need.
Yeah, and if you're bringing in Marcus Mariota or Mitchell Trubisky as a backup, I'm on board with that. What I'm saying is, in reference to the voicemailer, I wouldn't bring him in and say and hand him the starting job like that. That's, I think Mariota and Baker, they have similar paths. I think Baker's a little bit better than him right now. That's just kind of my opinion. All right, you mentioned this, and this is NFL trades to prevent the Rams from repeating as Super Bowl champs. This one's according to the Bleacher Report. They have the Browns getting Russell Wilson for Baker Mayfield and a 2022, 2023. So 2 first-round picks, Baker Mayfield. I don't think the Seahawks would do that. I might be inclined to do that if matter of fact, if it was Baker Mayfield and 2 firsts for Russell Wilson, I'd probably do that, although that's not the type of trade Andrew Berry typically makes.
Yeah, I would too. I think that's a good deal. But as he said today, quarterback trades are a lot of speculation and very rarely happen. And they still do need wide receivers. I mean, yes, Russell Wilson helps, but if Russell Wilson has no help at the receiver position, it could be a situation very similar to Seattle. So if you're going to have number 13 overall, you're going to use it on a receiver more than likely. And you don't have that pick anymore. Your first receiver is going to be in the second round. It's difficult. So I think what we see in free agency for the Browns will really kind of paint a better picture as to what they're going to do in terms of the quarterback position or in terms of potential trades. So I'm very interested in seeing that. That's a trade I would make. I think that would give Baker a fresh start with a new team in Seattle. And I think it would give Russell Wilson an opportunity to maybe have a roster around him that's potentially ready for a Super Bowl. And I think it would work, and I think Russell Wilson's a great fit in Kevin Stefanski's system, but I also love the fact that, the Browns drafted Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's, put it all for this season. He's put it all out there. And, I think that there would be something kind of, I don't know if it would be nice for Baker Mayfield to work out for the Browns, just to have that franchise cornerstone that was homegrown and built in Cleveland. But hey, a Super Bowl is a Super Bowl. So if you want to bring in Russell Wilson to win a Super Bowl, I get it. I do.
Hayden Grove and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. And an interesting one, a mock draft for free agents. Who the Browns end up with, we'll tell you when Sports4CLE continues. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
We continue talking Browns with Hayden Grove, who is at the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Time for us to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns last season.
I just got to address the speculation that Kevin Stefanski is somehow responsible for Baker Mayfield's injury and playing him through the injury, and he should have sat him. This thing that Browns fans have really been harping on recently. I just want to pose the whole scenario in the sense that what if Baker Mayfield had been benched, Stefanski did bench him, we start Case Keenum, rest of the season plays out the exact same way. And then at the end of the season, it comes out that Kevin Stefanski went against the medical staff who said that Baker Mayfield was okay to play and went against Baker who said he was okay to play and wanted to play. That would have just created even more situations of just tumultuous situations, and I don't think the fans would have probably been okay with that either. I find it a bit hypocritical and contradicting for people to be criticizing Stefanski. Thanks.
Hayden Grove, that's a really good point. A really good point. The thing is, and we've talked about this probably more than you would like to, the Browns and Kevin Stefanski started Baker Mayfield because he was cleared medically, he felt he could play, and they clearly felt he gave him the best chance to win. I mean, the bottom line is you don't do something unless you think that puts you in the best, you and your team, in the best position to win.
Yeah, I've said it time and time again. Baker Mayfield's job is to put it all out there and to be ready to play, no matter if he's medically cleared and if he's hurting. It's his job to be ready to play. I mean, he wants to play. That's the job of the quarterback, is to want to be out there for your team. the onus of him not playing, if you thought it was best for him to sit, and I didn't necessarily think it was best for him to sit. But if you thought that it was best for him to sit, that's on Stefanski, that's on the front office, and that's on the medical staff. It's not on Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's job is to be as ready to play as possible, and he was able to get out there. If they felt that Baker Mayfield at 65% was better than Case Keenum at 100%, then so be it. I mean, yeah, Baker Mayfield didn't have a good year, but I mean, it wasn't as though it wasn't as though he didn't look like he could play the game. I mean, he played the game. He didn't play it at a high level, and I think there could be a lot of reasons for that. But yeah, I don't think the blame necessarily goes on anyone. It's an injury. It stinks. But they obviously felt confident in Baker's ability, despite that he wasn't 100%. Baker felt that he wasn't going to injure it further, which he really didn't. Outside, he had the fracture at some point, but that healed. So it's a snake bitten situation. It's tough, and it's something that that we can't really look back on and take anything back from. You just got to look on the future and getting him healthy going forward.
All right, this one is kind of interesting. We always have mock drafts for the upcoming college draft situation. This one done by Cody Benjamin, CBSSports.com, a free agency mock draft. So they have the Browns with the 13th selection in the free agency mock drafts, taking wide receiver Michael Gallup. Funny enough, perfect spot for Odell Beckham Jr., but that's not going to happen. Chris Godwin went second to the Lions. Allen Robinson went 10th to the Jets. And the Browns' Jadeveon Clowney went 24th to the Dallas Cowboys. But again, Michael Gallup is an intriguing free agent. My question is, what's the price? He's coming off an ACL, so you want to make sure, one, that he's going to be back to what he was before that. He fits in the age range, so this is a guy that I'm guessing Andrew Berry and the Browns will see what they're looking for contract-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be a great value play here for a guy like Michael Gallup, who, like you said, coming off injury. They mentioned Odell and Jarvis. I don't think either of those guys on the team next year. And obviously, Odell didn't want to be on the team this year. Jarvis Landry wants to be on the team next year, but I don't know if the money works out for him. So it's going to be a very different receiving group next year, and Michael Gallup could be a good complementary piece. I don't think he's a piece that you necessarily want to say, this is our main guy, this is our number one. But certainly for a good value piece and a good, part to this this new receiver room, I think he absolutely would be a good fit and the right price.
All right, I threw this out yesterday. Let me throw this out to you. If the Browns can find a way to get like a couple of years, say 2 years for Jarvis Landry, and it's $10 million a year, does that make more sense than going out and spending $10 million a year on a free agent wide receiver who you're not really sure? I mean, you know what Jarvis Landry is in this system, and you know what he is in the locker room.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense. I do. If the only thing would be, is that player actually young? Is he younger? Is he more athletic? Is he going up in his career as opposed to down? I think at this point you can say that Jarvis maybe is kind of starting to tilt downward. He's had an amazing career and he's done some great things with a couple of organizations in Miami and Cleveland. And certainly he's a guy that I would want around the Browns for not only his ability on the field, but in the locker room. So you got to weigh all that. You got to weigh, okay, the locker room, the on the field, the money. If the money's the same, you got to weigh the age, weigh the production, all that kind of stuff. So I would tend to lean with you in that I would take Jarvis Landry just because he's been the heart and the soul. He and Baker have a connection. He wants to be in Cleveland. He's been productive when healthy, and he's been relatively healthy up until this past year. Never missed a game due to injury until the COVID thing with the Jets, and then furthermore this new thing with with the knees and whatnot. So. I would be probably more inclined to give Jarvis Landry a known commodity deal more than somebody that's trying to prove it.
Yeah, and again, if he doesn't want to take the money, I would never blame a professional athlete for wanting more money, because their careers are limited to 8 to 10 years on the high side. So he needs to get as much of that money for his future as he can. All right, before we go to break and let you go, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason one more time. This one about the Browns season this year.
I realize this is a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda, But with all the offensive woes, the outbreak of injuries, being decimated with COVID for a couple of weeks, didn't the Browns' season really come down to 2 games? If the Chiefs would have hung out and beat the Bengals in Cincinnati, and if the Browns would have split the season series with the Steelers, wouldn't we be talking about the Browns as AFC North champions? I realize that the Bengals sat their starters for the last game of the season, but with the AFC crown on the line in the last game, I like the chances of Cleveland. I'd like to hear your comments. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It shows how small the margin for error is. I think the Browns matched up pretty well with the Bengals. I get where he's going. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, and it goes from being what would have been a really exciting season to a really disappointing season.
Yeah, you had those 2 games. You had the Las Vegas game, which was a COVID, disaster for the Browns. You had the like I said, the Chiefs game at the beginning of the year. You had the Steelers game at home, like which you kind of mentioned. I mean, I don't think they got one game that they really needed to go their way for things to be better. I mean, maybe the Thursday game against Denver where Case Keenum started, but I think they win that game regardless. They just didn't get that one game where they really needed to. The Los Angeles game against the Chargers, the list goes on. So, yeah, as bad as it was and as disappointing as it was, I think they were a little snake-bitten. And as lucky as they might have been the year before, maybe it kind of came back to average. So next year they got to be better than lucky. They got to be good, and they got to be able to overcome things that don't go their way. That's the bottom line.
Hayden Grove from the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com, coming to us from the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. Hayden, as always, man, thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
All right, Hayden Grove, make sure you read him. Page of the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, YouTube personality Quincy Carrier joins us. We're going to talk more about the Browns. We head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns. Before we get to Quincy Carrier, YouTube personality, we're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one with a potential trade idea.
Couple quick trade scenarios. Would you give up the 13th pick for Calvin Ridley if his mind's together and he's ready to play football? Number two, you said Seattle needs a center. Is there any way we could package J.C. Trotter and a couple third-round picks and probably DK Metcalf from them, and then our wide receiver group set? Number three is they need to work Baker out of the shotgun. 3 wides, a tight end, and a running back. He'd tear the league up. Thank you, Dave, for listening. Appreciate you.
All right, as always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier, YouTube personnel. So, Quincy, when we unpack that one, I don't think I would give up the 13th pick for Calvin Ridley. I like him a lot. I think you can probably get him for a second, maybe even a third-round pick. I'd be all in for trying to get DK Metcalf away from the Seahawks. You're probably going to have to give up a first-round pick plus for him. And I'm all on board if you can find a way to get Baker Mayfield out of the shotgun. I think that plays to one of his strengths where he can see things develop in front of him. Your thoughts on those as we go through them? I just threw a lot at you for your first time here on Sports for CLE.
It's cool. It's cool. The thing with Calvin Ridley, right? That's an interesting one I've seen thrown around here. And the question I have for everybody who wants to trade for Calvin Ridley or give up like a massive amount of assets is, don't you think that at 13 you can get a wide receiver who can be at least the same caliber prospect as Calvin Ridley without having to worry about some of the other things that Calvin was dealing with during the season? I think that's more feasible. Look, it's very possible that a Treylon Burks or Drake London or Garrett Wilson is available there at 13. There's just so many of those guys in this draft that's going to be available at that spot. I just don't know if it ever makes sense to give up a 1 there. Now, when it comes to DK, what the guy said, with 2/3 for DK? Yeah, I would do that in a heartbeat, right?
And J.C. Treader and 2/3. I'd still do that. But their thought is they may be able to get a high number 1, like, top 5 number 1 for DK Metcalf.
They will have Seattle will have an uphill battle trying to get a number 1 out of somebody for a wide receiver, because it's just, I don't think people are willing to give up that much for a position that ultimately is going to be reliant on how well you can block and throw the ball, right? Like, it's not just throw the ball to DK and make it happen. You have to have other things around him. I mean, the Seahawks 2021 season kind of proved that, because they had DK, they had Russ, no offensive line, did not make the playoffs. So that's still kind of a roadblock there. Again, it kind of falls into, where are you with Baker Mayfield on that whole argument, right? Do you think Baker just needs weapons and that will solve some of the issues? Do you think he needs a scheme adjustment and that will solve the issues? Or do you think his issues are deeper than that really determines how hard you can go at wide receiver?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I'm curious though. He did have success in college. That was predominantly shotgun in that spread. So I get the question, and I think that does play to his strength. So let's see if there's a way that you can kind of merge Kevin Stefanski and things that play to his strength. All right, we're going to run through. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, one last thing I wanted to point out to that, because there is something to it, right? When he ran trips left, trips right a lot. In 2018, he had a lot of success out of it, right? That was when they had Jarvis out there running the slot for the most of the year. And that Baltimore game is really where they used it, week 17 of 2018. And he played well in that game. He threw like a bunch of interceptions, but that just was what he did in his rookie year. But he did play well. It's just, with Baker, the question is, how often you want to throw the ball, knowing that, throughout 3 years, man has had a lot of turnovers. So, he's going to turn the ball over if he's in position to do it. And then the question is just like, how often do you want to put him in that position? Is the risk worth that reward?
All right. We mentioned the name Calvin Ridley, this one from NFL Rumors, and it is attributed to somebody that is normally covers the Falcons. So the Falcons are, in fact, expected to trade Calvin Ridley, frees up $11 million in cap space, and they're trying to sign back Cordell Patterson, who they had before he left via free agency. So here's where I'm going with this one. What would you give up to the Falcons? If you can get Ridley for a second or third, would you do that? Is it worth the risk? Obviously, you're going to check out, make sure he checks out okay. He stepped away from football. We kind of alluded to it just to kind of get his mind right a season ago.
I'm going to go new school NFL on here. I'd be willing to give a conditional second, right? Based off of what he does. Does he play? Is he there, right? It's going to be one of those conditional pick situations where, yeah, if Calvin Ridley's healthy, he's more than worth a second-round pick. But, if he does not want to play football, if there are other things in his way that keep him off the football field, then hey, I'm not willing. And a lot of people are kind of in that spot. So I think that's going to be a conditional pick situation. Maybe you can attach a conditional 2 that could turn into a 4 if it doesn't work out. And then you can throw in, just a regular 5, or maybe you even want to throw in a 4 for next year so you can sweeten the pot for them. But yeah, you're going to be, if I were looking at this from a GM perspective for Calvin Ridley, I would go into the conditional pick pile, do some of that new stuff that you see GM starting to dip into now.
I like the answer. I like the way you're thinking there. But yeah, if you can get Ridley and not have to give up a number 1, and that's a guy that, if he's right, could very well be your number 1 wide receiver that you need. Let's take a look. Mel Kiper released his latest mock draft earlier today. He has the Browns trading up with Denver, so he has given up a third rounder and their 13 to move up to number 9. And the theory here is they get ahead of the Jets so they can take Drake London, wide receiver from USC. And you see the 6'5" height, talented guy, really good at the point of attack, goes and makes contested catches, red zone target. Do you like Drake London?
I like Drake London. I don't like him enough to take him and trade up to get him, right? Like, I think he's somebody, I think these wide receivers, they're not as good as like the 2014 class, where that class was insane. They had like 5 or 6 guys who ended up being like top wide receivers in the league. This is a class where you're going to have a lot of guys who are going to be perennial 1,000-yard wide receivers, but they're never going to be like in the top 5 of receiving yards, maybe for a year or 2. But you're not finding like Jamar Chase in this draft, right? And when you're talking about trading up, especially for a wide receiver, when history at drafting wide receivers super early in the draft, I know we have seen Jamar Chase work out, but before Jamar, the best wide receiver in the draft class, you have to go all the way back to like Amari Cooper until that was the first guy taken. So when that's the case, and when wide receiving scouting can be a little bit of a gamble, you want to kind of fall back on giving up more assets to do it. I'd rather stay at 13. I'm actually in favor of trading back. If I can go back into the 20s, get an extra second round pick, I'm fine with Christian Watson out of North Dakota State, who's also 6'5", who also runs really fast, who also runs well with the football. It's just going to get drafted later in the draft just because of level of competition concerns at North Dakota State. But he comes from an offense that, if you watch his highlights, I mean, it's literally a Shanahan Stefanski style offense there that he comes out of. So you don't worry as much about if he can do the things. He's a really good blocker. Like, there are so many wide receiving prospects and prospects that will help the Browns at the back end of this first round and in the second round that I would actually value getting more picks back there more than I would value going up into the top 10 to get a guy like Drake London, who he's good. I like him, but I feel like you can get somebody who will be just as productive as him if you trade it back, and you can get more productive players.
All right, so along those lines, how do you solve the Browns wide receiver issues? I think, just in listening to you, I think you agree that room needs a whole bunch of help.
Yeah, it definitely needs help from multiple avenues, right? Like the personnel, I mean, like we're realistically talking about, it's possible they can walk into free agency in the draft without David Njoku, who is not under contract right now, without Rashard Higgins, who is not under contract, and possibly without Jarvis Landry. I mean, like, who's going to catch the ball? I mean, also Hooper, also somebody who might be gone. You're talking about 4 guys who took a lot of targets last year on the wide receiving core that wasn't that great to begin with. Just gone. I mean, like Odell, we know he's already gone too. He's been gone for a while. So you do have to rebuild this room, right? You're probably gonna have to bring in some veterans just so you can have somebody to be the example in that room, especially if you get rid of Jarvis Landry and you can't restructure him. And you are gonna want to, like, that's why I say trade back, right? Double dip. Get 2 of these wide receiving prospects maybe at the back end of the first round instead of going all in on one guy, because we're not one guy away in that wide receiving room. We just need depth to begin with. Another thing that can help out the wide receiving room, I know it's been talked at nauseum, just We just need more consistent quarterback play, right? If the quarterback plays better, it makes a lot of people's lives easier when it comes to receiving the ball. So those two things, I mean, the consistency on the offensive line, we hope we're not going to have an injury-riddled offensive line like we did last year. So, I mean, like the Browns did last year. So that's also a factor. But, quarterback play and just getting more competent bodies into the room can help.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we continue talking Browns. We'll talk, can the Browns extend a couple of guys and some cap casualties from other teams that the Browns might be interested in. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, YouTube personality. And Quincy, so the question is, can the Browns keep both David Njoku, Denzel Ward, get them signed to long-term deals? What do you think?
Man, I think they can. It's definitely possible that they can. I think David wants to come back. I think Denzel Ward wants to come back. I think those are both things that on that side can happen. The problem with that is I don't know if the Browns want both of those players back. And the only reason I question that is we have seen how proactive the Browns can be about these situations coming into it, right? When it comes to, the offensive line guys they wanted to re-sign, they were quick to re-sign them and get ahead of it, right? When it comes to anybody with the running backs, right? Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, they took care of those situations early. David, I mean, he's days away from being able to walk away free of charge. So I'm concerned about if they really want to bring him back, just because the urgency has never been there to keep him. Maybe they do franchise tag with him, but the amount of targets they gave him last year wouldn't match up with a player you would expect to be franchise tagged with. So I don't know if that's what they want to do. With Denzel Ward, the injury history might scare them off. I think he's such a tremendous player that you live with it. And I think the last 2 years, his injury, the games that he missed really had nothing to do with injury, right? He got the virus a couple of times, had to sit out because of protocol. So he ended up missing games because of that, but it wasn't because he was injured all year. So I think he's gotten over that. And when he's healthy, he is one of the best corners in the NFL. I mean, just turn on that Bengals game. He's the only guy in the NFL that made Jamar Chase look human all 2021. And that's due to how talented and skilled he is as a defensive back. So I hope you can keep those two players back, especially David Njoku, just because we have nobody else that can create explosives down the field in the passing game right now. And David is one of those guys who can. So he's definitely somebody you want to. I just don't know if the energy is there with the front office, because all the signs that could make you know that they were going to re-sign, the guards and even Joe Bitonio, where they were really proactive about it, just aren't there with these guys. They're not being proactive about it. And usually that kind of means that they don't have these two figured in their long-term plans.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to find out if they do sign David Njoku. They need to feature him a little bit more. I know he's had drops. I know there's issues. He's getting better with that, and he is a matchup problem for defenses. All right, let's talk about cap casualties that you think could help the Browns from around the NFL in 2022. Who you got your eye on?
Ooh, there are a lot of names out there that could be interesting. I'm just going to throw the hot one out that I've heard a lot of people talk about is Carson Wentz could become a cap casualty. They don't want him there in Indy from all accounts, right? Like, it just doesn't seem like that's going to work out. It was kind of obvious at the end of the year with what Frank Reich said about him. He could be out there, and he wouldn't be a replacement, right? Like, you don't bring him in to start over Baker Mayfield, but you do bring him in just in case, hey, what if Baker gets injured again? We know that he can get injured. He's been injured 3 out of his 4 years in the NFL. What if he gets injured again? You have somebody to bring in that has a higher ceiling than what Case Keenum has had. Now, the floor with Carson Wentz is going to be, it's Carson Wentz. We know what we're in for with that, but there's a reason he's available at that point. So there are a number of guys. There's a lot of defensive ends that would be available just because of cap casualties. This is the year that if you can't re-sign Clowney, you're not going to be in trouble just because there are like 5-6 guys that might be available that fit the Clowney role in free agency. So it's going to be interesting to see who gets let go, who doesn't, because the cap has been in a precarious situation with all of these NFL teams. Some of these void years are starting to add up with these teams, so they're starting to get in cap trouble. So we'll see who becomes available, but I think there's definitely going to be a market there for the Browns. And I think that might be one of the primary markets that the Browns are going to traffic in this free agency, because I just don't think this is a year where they go day 1, day 2 free agency heavy. I think this is a year where they load up on these kind of players and kind of do a holding pattern for 2021.
All right, Quincy Carrier, where can folks find you? Really good stuff. I know you're on YouTube, so tell us where to find you on YouTube.
Oh, yeah, youtube.com/Quincy Carrier. If you don't feel like going into your URL bar, just go on the search tab right there on YouTube, put in Quincy Carrier. I'll pop up. You'll see my face talking about all kind of things Browns related, and sometimes even Cavs related, but that's where you can find me.
All right, Quincy, great stuff. We're going to have you back as often as you want to be here. Appreciate the time and the insight. Quincy Carrier, you can see him on YouTube. Thanks so much, Quincy.
No problem, man. You have a great day.
You too. Again, Quincy Carrier. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. Scheduled guests tomorrow, the D-Man, Dennis Maniloff, and Eddie McDonald. That's tomorrow at 4 o'clock on Sports for CLE. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody.